and welcome back to yet another cast. Guys, today I have for you something quite special, something quite unique, something life-changing, even something that will make your existence just a little bit brighter, just a little bit more palatable than it currently is. And what is this I'm referring to? I am referring to a 2v2 on a map called Bully's Utopia, created by Walker. Now, Walker has been on a roll lately, not only in terms of his map-making endeavors, but also in terms of his skill as a player. Walker has been killing it. You may have seen the video where he crushed me. And then recently, I played a game with him yesterday where he beat me again. Oh, of course, this was a 2v2. But nonetheless, shout out to Walker. This man has been doing... he's been working on overtime to provide the juicy content for this community, both in terms of his map-making endeavors and his skill as a player, embarrassing me. Time and time again, sir, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to make me look like a monkey on my own channel? But guys, before I get too much into this game, please, if you are watching this, subscribe to the channel and join my Discord. I'll put it in the link below. We are playing games every single day on TAF, and we would love to have you as part of the community. I would love to have you as part of my army of TA plebs. You too could be featured in one of my videos. You never know. It could happen. It happens all the time. Trying to grow the community. Come be part of it. If you love this game, come play with us. We have people of all skill levels. And so I will stop shilling. I will stop shilling there. But please, I would love to have you. We are a very nice community. We only accept good people. No cruelty allowed in my Discord, unless, of course, it is my cruelty that I am visiting upon others. But anyway, enough with that. Let's get into this game. Now, this is 2v2 on Walker's new map, Bully's Utopia. And one thing that's really interesting about this map that kind of makes it unique or unorthodox in some way is that it starts in the water. Now, why is this important? Well, the reason it's important is because, as you can see, the players have been starting hovercraft. 3 of the players started hovercraft, which, it goes without saying, is a rather unorthodox way to play on a map that consists mostly of land. But the problem is, if you don't start hovercraft, you are forced to walk all the way up here and build a vehicle plant, which it does seem like Mr. Soldier has. But, okay, Pink also, Mr. Race also reclaiming his hovercraft plant, and Red going into air. So I have forgotten to introduce the players. Let me do that real quick. In yellow, of course, Walker. He created this map, Bully's Utopia. So he, I think, has reclaimed his hover plant is going into vehicles. Redshift has reclaimed his hover plant going into air, seaplanes actually. Race, it looks like he's reclaiming his hover plant and going into vehicles. And finally, Soldier, I'm not sure he ever built a hover plant. I don't think he did, but hold that thought. Walker has gotten a zapper all the way to the south of the map. Very well timed by Walker. A nicely timed zapper could make all the difference here. Already taking out a construction vehicle. Blue's commander having trouble catching this little monster. He will recede the tidal generators under the water to try and protect them. But this is a problem truly for our blue player. Mr. Soldier has no defense. He has no countermeasure against this. And he's really wasting his commander's time because the commander will have to, like, try to reclaim this under the water. That's the only way he can even interact with it. Of course, you cannot D-gun things under the water. The water will make the D-gun useless, and so all he can do is try to reclaim this thing and hope to God that Walker is not paying attention. And luckily for him, Walker is not paying attention, because if that thing had survived, it could continue moving around his base and wrecking havoc, because blue has almost nothing. But okay, I've got to keep introducing the players. I'm getting distracted. Here in red, Mr. Next Red Shift. In pink, of course, Race, one of the most decorated players that I have on my channel. And finally, here in blue, Soldier. So, red has sent down a squadron of about 3 depth charge gunships, and now is going to see what he can get done with these cormorants. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, cormorant. And he will be inflicting some damage. I think that's part of what makes this map so interesting. It is very difficult to defend both your naval presence and any kind of land expansion you may have. And red has certainly caught pink off guard with this well-timed depth charge gunship play, and that will definitely cause some economic trauma to the southern team. So nicely done by our southern players in defending this. But unfortunately, I think the northern team will definitely have an advantage after that nice harassment with, of course, Walker's lightning hovercraft and red's depth charge gunships. So early on, I certainly think the northern team is going to have an advantage, and you can kind of see that, I think, in the economic stats. But again, the thing about this map that will make it so interesting is that there's just a huge variety of strategies that can be employed, that we've already seen to some degree, the use of hovercraft and seaplane gunships. You do not see seaplane gunships on a map like this very often, but of course there are not very many maps like this. Red now with the bomber play as well, and pink doesn't really have any air defense at all. Blue with a single freedom fighter chasing this thing down, and a second freedom fighter coming into the fray, and more as well. So that will be cleaned up, but as you can see, the northern team has more of the map here. This is such a strange map, I have to say. It's very, very unique kind of map. The way the metal is structured, obviously you have the metal and the pawns that you start in, but also additionally there's metal spots that go from north to south, basically in a straight line, all the way spanning the length of the map. So that will create an interesting dynamic, as both teams will be forced to expand outward if they want to increase their economies. But right now, again, the northern team applying all the pressure, it seems. A single leveler causing even more trouble for pink, who's already behind, having been the victim of red's airplay shenanigans up to this point in the game. So right now, good job by the northern team keeping the pressure up, but pink will have some ability to recover. His teammate has allowed him to have all 3 of these pawns, so despite the fact that he's a little bit behind in terms of the map, he should be able to hopefully stay in the game long enough to recover and create some kind of army of his own. Again, this is such a strange map. Here in the middle, we have some terrain features that will make it so that there is a bit of a choke point. Of course, it's pretty big. It would be somewhat difficult to defend all of this area. And of course, the trees can be cut down or burn down as circumstances require. But yeah, nice airplay by Blue. I have to say he's been making good use of his fighters, keeping the northern team from ending the game with his fighter escorts. Good close air support, killing all of these levelers without so much as a scratch. But now Red bombing more of Race's base. So Race, I think, is probably getting frustrated at this point with the levelers and the bombers. It's difficult to do much of anything. But a nice job by the northern team. Again, keeping the pressure up, keeping the dream alive. The dream of beating Race and Soldier in a 2v2. That can never be an easy sort of proposition, because Race and Soldier are very powerful macro players, and so if you want any chance against these two guys, you will need to ramp up the pressure and keep it up for the rest of the game. Now, earlier it looked like Race was reclaiming this hovercraft platform. I could have sworn that he was, but now it's still here. I'm not sure what he's doing with it. I don't think it's going to be very useful. Maybe he's still reclaiming it, but maybe he rebuilt it, or I'm not sure. It's a little strange that it's here. Maybe he just decided to build a couple more hovercraft with it before reclaiming it. But nonetheless, hovercraft probably aren't going to make a huge impact on this game past the early stage, just because this is primarily a land map. Race has managed to get some units through. Few javelins. That's a good composition for this particular situation. I think it could turn out well for him. We will have to see. But yeah, the thing about this map that makes it so interesting, aside from the water starts, is just how open it is. Even the most open maps that I cast are typically not this open. This is a mostly flat battlefield, and it's pretty large, so there's a huge amount of room to maneuver. Race building his heavy laser tower a little bit too far forward there, I think. That construction vehicle will die as Walker attempts a counterattack of Panthers and Samsons. But Race continuing to move forward with these javelins. I don't think they're going to get too much accomplished. Redshift building some pyros now. So I'm just going to check out the player bases, see if there's anything incredibly noteworthy. Soldier now on T2 vehicles. I think he's probably reclaiming his vehicle plant as well. Still building fighters, and Race looks like he just finished 2-1 air recently, so seems like 3 players are on ARM T2 vehicle. It's a little surprising, so that means there will be no ARM T2K bots, no Mavericks or Zeus's this game, at least for now. But ARM T2 vehicles, Panthers are obviously very useful in this sort of situation. I think if either team can get enough Panthers and find those perfect avenues of approach, it can definitely be game-changing. But yeah, right now, the game is very even. Red still struggling to take his portion of the map, so I'm a little bit surprised, given how far ahead the northern team was early on, that Red would not be able to control his side of the map better. But of course, Race did apply some pressure with that javelin push. And Red looking for his own counterattack here. Neither team has really done an effective job of defending the middle. There's been a few attempts, but ultimately most of the defenses have been destroyed. There's a few light laser towers, but at this stage of the game, that shouldn't really make much of a difference in the outcome. But Red moving through with some pyros and storms. Both teams still attempting to defend their respective sides. Red has found an avenue of approach. He will take out at least a construction vehicle here, if not more, as the battle continues to rage. Both sides attempting to get what harassment and raiding they can done, as Soldier with a nice group of Panthers and Javelins that should be able to clean this up without too much trouble. So the issue now is the game, I think, is beginning to reach a relatively stable place where both teams are going to secure the middle. And from this point on, the question is how can either side therefore break through. Now Red has found an opening. He does find a very sneaky approach with these 5 pyros, and the southern team doesn't seem like they were quite expecting this. Again, neither team has been able to effectively build defenses. On a map like this, you would expect that one or both sides would have this entire gap covered at this point. But so far, it hasn't really happened that way. Red moving through with these pyros, getting a little bit more economic damage done against his opponent Race. But Race has built some bombers, and he will probably try to hit the pyros, but unfortunately pyros are quite fast, and it looks like Race is more interested in using his bombers offensively. Now one thing I'd like to see Red do is just burn down these trees, carve a path, carve an approach for himself through the forest to allow even more access to Red's base, or to Race's base. As once again, these pyros still streaming through. Race looking for some bombing targets. There is not a lot of air defense here. So great job by the southern team, and by Race in particular, to use bombers in this situation. This game has been very back and forth, and I don't think either team is even close to being able to cover the entire surface area of their base with air defense. But Red's still streaming through with pyros. I don't know how much it's accomplishing now, though. Pink is moving through with some Bulldogs and Panthers. So still a very close game. Red still struggling to take his portion of the map. That's definitely something that's hurting him, I think, at this point. He's going to be lacking on metal. There's 5 or more spots that are not claimed, where everyone else has taken most of their spots. Of course, some of Race's spots have been raided as well, so it still remains pretty even. But very surprised the middle has not been more well defended. We are getting there. I assume that if enough time passes, we might see some Guardians and Toasters as well being thrown up and making it even harder to move through. But again, we do have the forest that can be burned down for an alternate avenue of approach. we'll have to see how that plays out. So blue is asking race if he wants to focus red, making the observation that he has no defenses. As I mentioned, there is not as much defense as one might expect in this situation on the north or the south side. And there is a giant gaping hole here that the southern team can attempt to exploit if possible. But one thing I do want to say as a caster, but also a player, it is always kind of an interesting dilemma when you're playing these sorts of, especially 2v2 or larger games, of how to crack this particular chestnut of breaking into your opponent's base. And also, not just breaking onto their side of the map, but getting economic damage done or having a meaningful impact on the game. Sometimes just sending waves of units isn't really enough. You truly need a critical mass, or you need a large enough force to actually break through and deal that game-ending damage to your opponent. And sometimes it's difficult to know how to do that. I think that's part of what makes Escalation so interesting, because most RTS games are very much like a rock, paper, scissors formulation or style. So, and I mean just all of the major, most popular RTS games that you can think of, like StarCraft, very rock, paper, scissors, Warcraft 3, rock, paper, scissors, Age of Empires, rock, paper, scissors, Company of Heroes, to a large extent, is still rock, paper, scissors. Like, most RTS games follow this rock, paper, scissors style, and like, it's more complex than that, right? There isn't just 3 types of units, you know, it might be like, you know, rock, paper, scissors, and, you know, a couple other things, like, you know, knives and nukes, or whatever it is that people add if they want to increase the complexity of it. But in the end, you still have these very basic counters. The whole game is kind of designed around building a specific unit to counter a specific other type of unit. And in Escalation, counters exist, but this rock, paper, scissors mechanic doesn't really exist, because units are balanced more based on cost, firepower, health, range, damage, attack speed, all these other things, and so it's much more of like you could say like a real world simulation. You know, in real life you don't truly have rock, paper, scissors. You know, you like in Modern Warfare, you know, you send your Abrams tank at the enemy, and the question is, you know, what are their forces, right? Like, what is the constitution of their army, and how well does their military might stand up to yours? So what's so interesting in a game like Escalation is, especially in these bigger team games, it's not enough to simply attack your opponent's base. What you need to do is develop an army that can crush theirs, despite the fact that you're probably not going to be hard countering what they're doing. But so that's like, the question is, how do you crack this chestnut of creating the superior army, whether that be through numbers or composition, or even maybe just avoiding their army altogether. Maybe that's how you win. You don't even engage their army, because basically what I'm saying is, if both players have an equal amount of resources, which in this game it's fairly even, if everyone's just building units and throwing them at each other, you know, just mathematically it's going to come out to be about even. Like, in the end, both sides are just going to be crashing against one another's armies, and you know, maybe they'll get a little bit of distance, but it starts to turn into like World War I trench warfare, where, you know, we're talking about tiny gains of, you know, 1 or 2 kilometers. You know, that's all you're really getting onto your opponent's side of the base. So I think what makes Escalation so interesting then is, like, you have to find a way to use your resources better than they are. How are you going to build an army that's so superior to theirs with your resources that you can crush their army? Or maybe you can avoid their army altogether. And maybe you can invest your resources into air. Maybe you can invest your resources into drop ships and just go around their front line, kill their economy. Maybe you can build long-range plasma cannons or nukes. You know, maybe you can build an army of cloaked units. There's all different sorts of options. But the way these games tend to pan out is that it's just people building large armies of bulldogs or cans or whatever and just sending them at each other. Because that is, of course, the easiest thing to do, and I'm also guilty of that as a player. I just, you know, just build the most effective units like a bulldog. It's a very well-rounded, heavy tank, and just try to build more than the opponent. And sometimes that can work, but it's not the most efficient by far. Like that's basically what I'm trying to say, is that I think good players are finding ways to win that that either surprise the opponent or that use their resources more effectively. So Merles are a good example. The Merle, the vertically launched T2, the T2 vertically launched missile or rocket vehicle. These can be very effective, but only if used correctly. And right now, the Ambusher has a similar range, so these Merles, at least the way they're being used, this probably isn't going to work. So the way these games typically happen, again, given that both sides are having the same amount of resources and building essentially the same units, the way these games typically happen is that one player will tech to T3 more quickly, and then obviously once you get a tech 3 advantage, that's going to allow you to overwhelm your opponent, because the T3 units are so much stronger than the T2 units. But I don't think that's necessarily the most efficient. That's just the easiest. That's just the most kind of turn off your brain and win the game as easy as possible, is just get to T3 before your opponent and build the bigger units. But I think for the most part that is not the most efficient way to win these style of games. Look at this. Blue has almost no air defense. A single dropship full of Panthers or whatever could be absolutely devastating. So that's what I'm saying, is I think most players play in a too much of a straightforward manner. Like there's a absolute arsenal of tactical options available to them that they're not employing, just because you know, it's much easier to just build units. You just build tons of units and send them straight at your opponent. But having said that, Walker is on T3, so he is going for the T3 option here that I mentioned earlier. Just build bigger stuff than your unit, than your opponents, faster than your opponents. And that is the most straightforward way to win in a kind of stalemated situation like the one that we're in. But guys, I'm just telling you, there are a ton of other options than just going T3, and I don't even think T3 is necessarily even the most efficient. I do like to see a tactical nuke. I've mentioned, I think maybe in my last cast, that players are not building enough tactical nukes, especially in these sorts of engagements or situations where it has reached a stalemated position, a tactical nuke can really break open the front line and give you the ability to move in. But yeah, what I was saying before is that pumping out tons of units is, and you know, just trying to overwhelm your opponent, it is a strategy, but it's questionable. It doesn't seem like the most efficient way of winning in a game. Oh, that was a nice tactical nuke right there. And this is why, right? One tactical nuke just wrecked half of Race's army. So there's no way Race's army is going to make it very far from this point on. Very nice, very well placed tactical nuke there by, looks like Walker. People have said recently Walker has been on fire, and he certainly has. Walker's been playing out of his mind. But again, I'm pretty sure that this chestnut could be cracked in many, many different ways. And just building lots of units and sending them at each other. Of course, maybe as a viewer, that's the most fun to watch. That is the Total Annihilation style. Huge armies of robots and mechs and vehicles clashing endlessly. But in this kind of situation, I wonder if the southern team can really break through. That is so many sumos and penetrators. I do want to give the northern team props for building the right units defensively. So if you're going to tech to T3, obviously that will require you to... it requires a significant investment on your part over your opponent. So if you're going to tech to T3, one thing that you can do is build these units that are extremely efficient at defense of sumos and penetrators. I've called Kings of T2. These are like the tier 2.5 units for arm and core with a huge range, tons of damage. Of course, this is the upgraded penetrator with the double barrel. I don't think these are the upgraded sumos. But nonetheless, the northern team, they have the right idea here. If it's going to go into trench warfare, the best thing to do is just to tech to T3 faster than your opponent, or that's, I wouldn't say it's the best thing to do, but it's certainly the easiest thing to do. But for example, if one or both teams had just built long-range plasma cannons here, they could start shelling the defenses from way out of their range, and then even start hitting their resources. Once the front is broken up, they can then just move in and win the game that way. But Redshift with a nice army of sumos, and I don't know if there's enough defense here. There probably is with this tactical nuke. There may be just enough defense. It seems like Pink stopped producing units for a little bit. He's got a bulldog or two, but that is a massive number of sumos. This could be a difficult situation for Pink. I'm not sure what he was doing. Oh, it looks like he's teching to T3, but this didn't seem like the best time to do it. Red has been building up this force, and the reality is Race probably could have stopped this, but he needs penetrators and maybe annihilators and other units that can deal with the sumos. Red literally just built a ton of sumos and now is walking into Race's base. So that's never a good situation to be in if you are in Pink's position here. And Pink has built this pretty far forward as well, so again, I'm surprised that Race has so little. He's really, and so this just gives you an idea of how much investment a T3 takes. You know, Race stopped building units And because he stopped building units, it has allowed red to simply walk onto his side uncontested and now inflict a decent amount of economic damage. Of course, Walker also already on T3. So overall, guys, the northern team, I think, has just been playing this game a lot better. Nice harassment early on to give themselves an advantage. And then building the right units in the middle to hold the enemy off. Penetrators and Sumos are tier 2.5. Soldier did build his own penetrators, but Race not building anything he really needed to protect himself in this sort of situation. And now bringing his commander, but I'm wondering if it's going to be a little too late, because red, with a critical mass of Sumos, and now bombers waiting in the wings to end Race's dream. Race will most likely lose this Ultra K-Bot assembler as well, so Race is in a terrible position and has been from pretty early on in the game. But the thing is, I'm not sure what Race's strategy was this game. I guess he did attempt to push earlier with that army of Bulldogs and Lugers, but one tactical nuke stopped that push in its tracks. So guys, that just gives you an idea of how one player can use their resources efficiently. One tactical nuke can take out like 10 times its value worth in units and give you such an economic advantage. And it surprises me that people don't build tactical nukes more, because even in this game we've seen how effective they can be in stopping a push or breaking open defensive lines. You know, just building units sometimes is not the most efficient strategy. Of course, that's what Red has done. He's just built Sumos. Red has just built Sumos. Not just Sumos, he's got his bombers back here waiting for some kind of run, but it doesn't really seem like he needs them. The Sumos are doing plenty. But again, guys, I am also guilty of this. I think from my future games, I'm going to start trying to invent strategies to win games that don't include just sending huge armies of units at my opponent. You know, that include you know, building galactic gates on their side of the map, or you know, transporting armies into really absurd places, or using crawling bombs, or long-range plasma cannons, which we don't see very often in Escalation. And it surprises me, because actually, of all the mods, of all the TA mods, and even iterations, like if you include BAR and FAF, the long-range plasma cannons are the most effective in Escalation than any other game. They're so cost-efficient, they're so accurate. I think the reason people don't build them as much is because obviously they can't move. They are vulnerable. You do have to protect them, so it is quite an investment. But nonetheless, Race is holding this off for now, but economically he's been so devastated by this attack, I don't know if he can recover. Walker now moving in with T3. Soldier has some nice defenses, but these Merles are getting damage done. This game could end disastrously for our southern team, and the reality is I don't see how they're going to come back. Blue is on T3, working on a Demolisher, and of course the Demolisher, like the Super Penetrator, he's already got one. So these Demolishers will be effective against the Sumos, but the issue is that the southern team's base has been cracked open. The middle has been cracked, units will just continue to stream through, and finally Redshift, with this fleet of bombers, may just try to end the game if he possibly can. But again, the issue being, I don't know how the Southern team recovers from this situation. Demolishers are good, but Demolisher is more of a support unit. They themselves can't really frontline. They do a massive amount of front-loaded damage to a single target, but the issue is that they don't have an extremely high DPS. So the Demolishers might help them survive, but it's not going to help them win. And I do like Blue's use of penetrators and Race's use of air. It's very effective this game. These bombers still waiting for the opportune moment. Not sure what Red's waiting for exactly. It is going to be a situation where the way he uses those bombers could have an impact on the game or like the outcome. But I'm not sure yet how or what he's waiting for. Both players using brawlers, and in fairness, the northern team is not building much air defense, so these brawlers have been incredibly effective at holding off these attacks. But finally, Red sending his scouts forward and the bombers to follow. This bombing run has been probably 20 minutes in the making or more. Some nice micro here, taking out lots of extractors, and I think targeting the Ultra Vehicle Plant, it will get it with plenty to spare. And even though that will probably be the end of the bombing run, it still, I think, got plenty accomplished. Taking out that T3 factory is going to make the situation even more dire for the Southern team, as they are no longer on T3, given that Race's T3 factory was killed. Red. So one thing I will say is that Red is only now going to T3 at like the 44-minute mark. This is super late. But the reality is that Red did not need T3 to win. He still doesn't need T3 to win. Red could easily win on T2. He just built a ton of sumos and walked them into Race's base, and of course the bombing run as well. But yeah, Red showing that sometimes just building the right composition of units, sumos in particular, and having enough production power can be the best way to win. Sometimes just building more, or just building a superior army to your opponent. Because sumos cost a lot and they're slow. So that's the issue with sumos, is they're very expensive and they don't move very quickly. But if they get in range of your opponent's base, it is difficult to stop. So that's kind of that's something I've been thinking a lot about, is how to make sumos more effective. And the way to make sumos more effective is to try and circumvent their major weakness, which is how slow they are. So whether that means building transports to get them to the front more quickly, or using galactic gates to transport them to the front, or even behind enemy lines. There's got to be a way to make, like, take sumos, which are amazing in so many regards, but in this one regard, in the fact that they're so slow, they are hard to use, especially on a very long map like this. It takes forever for them to get to from one side to another. So finding a way to circumvent the sumo's major weakness by building transports or teleporting them somehow to the front line or even into the enemy's base, that is something I'm going to experiment with, I think, in future games. Because if the sumos could just go straight from the production line into the enemy base, or at the very least just to the front line. The unit would go from being strong to overpowered. There are a lot of ways in Escalation that you can kind of break the rules like this. But again, I think people don't use them as much as they could. Especially because, you know, these strategies do work. The strategy of just building a lot of units and sending them at your opponent does work a lot of the time. It worked for Red. You just built a lot of sumos, sent them at Race, and Race was not ready. And it's not that Race couldn't have stopped that, but he didn't have the right counters. Race himself has said before that he struggles to build the right composition of units. But yeah, once again, Southern team in a bit of trouble. Economically well behind. Redshift, his economy looking very good now. A stark contrast from earlier on in the game when he hadn't even taken most of his side of the map. He now has Moho extractors on every spot, including these in the middle, so Red with a gargantuan lead over Race. And I think it's probably just a matter of time here. Walker upgrading all his extractors to T3. So definitely not the situation you want to be in if you are our Southern team. A well-placed Whiplash as well. 33 kills on that as well. So the Whiplash, the T3 air defense, so effective at all sorts of air, or it's extremely effective anti-air solution. Another tactical nuke, very well placed. It will take out most of those penetrators. So great use of tactical nukes this game by Walker. He's really caused a ton of damage to the Southern team. Guys, tactical nukes truly are not that expensive. Like compared to T3, tactical nukes are a bargain. It does take a little bit to build, and of course, you know, there is a kind of a tax on your economy to produce each missile, but it is truly not that expensive for what they can offer. And of course, your opponent can build anti-nukes, but you can always kill the anti-nukes without that much trouble. So yeah, tactical nukes, I'd like to see more of them. They are so effective. Even Berthas this game. Even long-range plasma cannons we do not see enough of, certainly in this community. But again, Blue has a nice defensive force. But the issue with the penetrators and demolishers is they're good at defending, they're not as good at attacking. Bulldogs at this point in the game are just going to be food for the sumos and cans, and I assume that Red finally, he's heard my prayers, building an Intimidator at the 51-minute mark. But building Widows as well, building more bombers. The game continues. Another tactical nuke by Walker, but once again, Southern team has to find a way out of this sort of stranglehold that they are in. And of course, Race did have his own tactical nuke. That was killed a long time ago. And I think it was killed before he could even use it. Certainly before he could use it effectively. But the nice thing about sumos is they have enough health to take a hit or two of the tactical nukes and survive it. So again, the only thing that keeps sumos balanced is how slow they are. If you could find some way to circumvent the sumo's speed, then these are just unbelievable. The thing about the penetrators are, the penetrators, they actually beat sumos, technically. But the penetrator is not as well-rounded, because the penetrator is, of course, faster than the sumo, given that it's on tracks, but they still only fire like once every 10 seconds, or they have a huge reload time. And so they're designed to kill larger units. They're designed as a kind of a big T2.5 or T3 unit. They struggle against large numbers of units or being surrounded, but the sumo does not really have the same weaknesses. Sumos fire pretty quickly, like once a second. Very it's like they have 3 guns, three cannons. So the sumo is pretty well rounded against almost anything on T1 and T2. The penetrator has to be supported, but the sumo is kind of like a one-man army. You can build an army of just sumos and kill your opponent with a single unit, but of course the issue being it's going to take you forever to do it. But again, the penetrator is a good support unit, and the chimera is a good front line, so mixing penetrators with chimeras and a couple demolishers, this is an effective composition. Soldier frustrated with how Walker is using Jeffy's. Walker is just using Jeffy's primarily for scouting, just to give him information on his opponent's base. And of course, these Jeffys aren't going to do much damage, but what they will succeed at doing is being extremely annoying and giving him good scouting information. Race making the observation that this might be GG. It is definitely not a good situation. Southern team has been on the back foot for a while, but it is difficult when you are economically behind. Sumo's now pushing down the map, and blue has an impressive army, a good mixture of units. The Chimera, demolishers, and upgraded penetrators. But again, pink and blue have just been on defense for the past 25 or 30 minutes. Every attempt that they've tried has just been tactical nuked into oblivion. And there hasn't been much built to try and stop that strategy, like for example the Scarabs, the mobile anti-nukes. I've built some recently when you get into a situation where your opponent is using tactical nukes against your army. Having those mobile anti-nukes can be effective, but I don't see players building them that often. And again, Soldier with a decent army. He is taking out a lot of Walker's stuff, but another tactical nuke coming in. Tactical nukes this game have just really proven their effectiveness. And Walker is just killing it with this one repulsor. I think that's all he has. But this, excuse me, 30 kills on it. But I wish we could see how much damage it's done. Even if it doesn't kill the units, it can soften them up considerably. It can get them very low. Too low to be able to push into the enemy base. Walker with a Warden as well, which will paralyze everything that comes into its range. Soldier attempting a push, but I think this is probably not going to cut the mustard. Because Walker simply has too much there, and Race has almost nothing at all. Southern team, terrible situation, but yeah, this is difficult place to be in. Walker now heading to T4. Seems a little bit unnecessary. Red working on a second Ultra K-Bot gantry for core. Walker stating that he's in trouble. The Warden has died. Red bringing bombers into the fray. I don't think Walker is in as much trouble as he thinks he is. Red with some more nice bomber play. Of course, there are Hawks here. This isn't going to get as much accomplished as the first time. It will slow down that push, but now there's some... Oh, okay. Walker, hearing my prayers, building a nice number of Berthas. Yeah, I don't think Walker was in trouble at all. Between all these Berthas and the units he has coming out, I don't think Blue's push is going to accomplish much of anything. So once again, yeah, now these Berthas hitting demolishers almost on the other side of the map. That is a tough situation to be in. Walker almost has infinite number of resources here. Not sure what's going on there. Something weird is happening on my screen. Ah, here we finally do see a Scarab. But guys, at an hour and 3 minutes into the game, it is way too late to be building Scarabs now. The damage has already been done with that tactical nuke, and the Berthas showing their worth here, crushing Soldier's army. Soldier's saying that the Buzzsaw is owning him, but there's no Buzzsaw. That is just a metric ton of Berthas. The Southern team considering surrendering, and at this point in the game, it's not a bad idea. They are so far behind economically. And with Walker moving to T4, I think it's only a matter of time. The Southern team will tap out. So guys, that was an interesting game. It's an interesting map. Yeah, it's not as close as I would have wanted it to be, but it was still really well played by both sides. Fortunately, we did get to see some tactical nukes and long-range plasma cannons, so thank you everyone for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next cast.